What's up, Cypress students? So glad that you're here. We're in our second week of our series, Distinct. Last week, we kicked off a new series called Distinct, and we looked at how Jesus is distinct from anyone else who's ever lived and how that's good news for you and I. And today, we're going to look at how you and I are distinct from anyone else and how this is good news for you, and it can be good news for the entire world. And so some people are really distinct. Like, you can see that they're different from the crowd, while other people kind of look similar to others. You have to really get to know their personality to see the distinctness. And for some people, they want to blend in, right? They want to be like other people. They don't want to stand out from the crowd, while others seem to be born to stand out. And so we all want to be accepted, but we also want to offer the world something different. We all want to have a purpose and something that we can offer the world that's different from anyone else. And so sometimes though, when it comes to fitting in and being accepted, we want that. We want to be unique, but we also want to fit in and be accepted, maybe not by everybody, but by certain people. And so how do we do this? How do we balance blending in and standing out and being unique, but fitting in with and being accepted by other people? So first off, I feel like I'm a pretty unique person. I feel like I'm a little weird. That's what I normally get called. So I brought a few things that make me unique. First, I have this basket full of fidget toys. I know a lot of people use fidget toys, but I'm the only one here at Cypress that I think that has a full basket, and like I use them in meetings. There's actually more of them, but they wouldn't all fit. They're gonna fall when I walked across the parking lot. The second thing is I'm like really crafty. I like to make things. I make signs. I don't know. I craft a lot of different things. I made a bench. I'm working on a chair, but I keep putting it off. And then the other thing is, I don't think it's that weird, but people think it's super weird, is all I drink is water. I don't drink Gatorade or lemonade or anything like that, just water, that's it. At NTS camp, people talked me into drinking an energy drink, but it did nothing for me, so I'm never gonna do it again. But there have been times in my life where I didn't embrace the uniqueness of myself and I did things to wanna fit in with people. And so on one particular thing that I can think of is I have a list of movies that I refuse to ever watch. And on that list was all of the Star Wars movies. I just wanted to be able to say that I never watched them. And then I let a boy talk me into watching them because he loved them, and then I pretended to like them and I watched all of them. And I can never get those hours of my life back. They weren't good, and now I can never say that I never watched the Star Wars movies. And so I honestly really regret it. And I know I'm not the only person who has like changed myself or pretended to do something to like fit in with someone or to be liked by someone. And it's not bad for us to want to dress on trend or to try a hobby that someone else likes or even to watch a movie that someone else likes. But there are times where we have this desire to fit in, and it's greater than our desire to be ourselves and to be who we were made to be and to do what we were made to do. And so last week we looked at a guy named John in the Bible. We're gonna look at another John today, but it's actually John the Baptist, so not the same person. We looked at John the Baptist a little bit at Christmas, but we're gonna look at him again today. And he was Jesus' cousin. He was 6 months older than Jesus, and he was pretty unique. He lived in the desert. He wore some weird clothes, and he ate bugs for dinner. Pretty unique, but he also had a unique mission. And his mission was he was the messenger sent to tell people that Jesus was coming. And people were pretty confused who John the Baptist was. And so we're gonna look at a verse from John chapter 1. And this is when people are asking John who he is. And so it says, this was John's testimony when the Jewish leaders sent priests and temple assistants from Jerusalem to ask John, who are you? He came right out and said, I am not the Messiah. Well, then who are you? They asked. Are you Elijah? No, he replied. Are you the prophet we are expecting? No. Then who are you? We need an answer for those who sent us. What do you have to say about yourself? John replied, in the words of the prophet Isaiah, I am a voice shouting in the wilderness, clear the way for the Lord's coming. And so when it comes to realizing our own distinctness, John had it pretty figured out. So there's three things that we can take from John when it comes to discovering our uniqueness, our distinctness. And the first one is John knew who he was not. He very clearly says, I am not the Messiah. When he could have easily, like people think he's the Messiah, he could have easily been like, yeah, come bow down to me. But he knew who he was and he was clear on who he was not. He didn't need people to think he was the Messiah. He didn't need to steal steal someone else's identity to have a meaning and to have purpose. And the second one is John knew who he was. He knew that God had created him for this clear purpose. And he was clear to tell people, like, he was the person that had been prophesied about in Isaiah, that he was the guy that was here to tell everyone that Jesus was on his way. And he was confident in his identity. He wasn't apologetic about eating bugs either. And then the third thing is that John knew how to fit into God's plan. He didn't know every detail of his future. He didn't need to sit and wait for God to tell him what to do every 5 minutes. He understood the bigger picture of God's plan. He didn't decide what made him unique and distinct. He looked at how God had made him, how God had equipped him, and he also didn't decide what his role was going to look like. He looked at Scripture and what Scripture said, and he quoted that often to let people know who he was, that he was the guy that had been promised to be the messenger for Jesus. And so if you have ever felt pressure to hide who you are or to change who you are, listen closely to what God says about you. He says that you are beautifully and wonderfully made, that you are deeply loved by the Creator of the universe, that created the stars and the planets and the galaxies and the plants and the animals and every person that has ever lived and who's living right now and will live one day. He created you. And he's with you, and he makes sacrifices for you, and he calls you son or daughter. And so stories like John the Baptist can kind of be a struggle to relate to, right? Because it seems like John had it all figured out. Like, he was the guy who knew his identity. He was eating bugs and he didn't care. While we're struggling with self-doubt and confusion and about who we are. And the thing is, though, we have to realize we don't see the whole picture. Like, we just see bits and pieces of John's story. Like, he could have struggled for a while to figure out his identity and to figure out who he was. And he probably did, because most people, really everyone, at some point has struggled with their identity, struggled in some way to figure out who they are, because it's a part of everyone's story. And it's a journey to figure out who God created you to be and what he gifted you with. And it can take our entire life, because we are always changing. And so as we continue to discover ourselves, let's use these things that John the Baptist did to help us. And so discover who you are not. Like, you don't need to steal someone else's identity. You don't need to be like anyone else, because God created each of us with a purpose and with a meaning. And the second one is discover who you are. Like John, discover the things that make you unique and embrace those, celebrate those, share those with other people. Because you are unique, and God is the one that created you that way, so it's good. And the last one is discover how you fit into God's plan. Like John, he wasn't told every minute what to do, right? He just saw the bigger picture. And so when it comes to us, you can be like, but John was prophesied about. Like, he knew what his mission was. But we can look at the bigger picture and figure out what mission God has put us on, figure out how God has told us to live, figure out what you care about, and how all of those things fit together. For me, I knew that I loved students. But I also knew that I didn't like school at all. So I knew I didn't want to be a teacher, and I realized that I had a passion for students coming to know who Jesus is. And so what are those things that God has gifted you with, and how do those things fit together? And it can take a long time to figure that out. And the Bible doesn't tell us like what classes to take. It doesn't tell us whether we should play soccer or lacrosse or even who we are going to marry, but it does tell us that God created and formed us, that he made us unique for a purpose, and that you're loved by God, and that he's with you. And when you begin to believe those things, it can give you more confidence in who you are, and you will continue to grow in that identity. And we are going to continue to dive into this and discover how God has gifted us and how we can use those to serve him and live for him. And so don't miss these next couple weeks. See you next time.